Welcome to the show. My guest tonight, Melissa Frum.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. Can you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm the CEO at the Calgary Food Bank. That's who I am right now. But I think I'm a community builder and a collaborator. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. And right now, I happen to be doing all of those things while serving the community in food insecurity at the Calgary Food Bank. I've worked in other charities and done other work over the last 2 decades, and I'll probably do other things in the future.
So when someone asks you about your job, how do you describe it?
Oh man, that's a funny one. I will say I'm working through figuring that out even for myself, because I don't like to identify myself as the CEO. And so oftentimes when people say, "Oh, what do you do?" I just go, "Oh, I work at the food bank," or "Oh, I work in a charity." And then as the conversation goes on, it may or may not come out that like I'm the CEO. So I'm either, I'm the good, the bad, and the ugly behind every decision. And sometimes that makes people really uncomfortable. Like, okay, well, now I wouldn't have said the thing I said if I knew who I was talking to. And so I'm starting to lean into just owning that title and that role. But on a day-to-day basis, sort of what do I do? A lot of meetings. It's the weirdest job. Like I bag potatoes. I deal with health and safety issues in the warehouse. I sometimes help to resolve client complaints and concerns. Sometimes I'm triaging clients into alternative resources in the community to make sure that they get the services they need. I'm trying to grow my staff and help them to be community leaders. So there's a lot of mentorship and a lot of team meetings. We are in the middle of a time of huge growth in our capacity at the food bank. So I'm visioning and I'm strategizing. So it is definitely a job where no 2 days are the same.
Is there something that you hear often people misunderstand about the food bank?
Oh, so many things. And I think, I'm rounding into my 3-year anniversary in this role, so I don't think I can call myself new anymore. But I'll say when I was new, I think there was even things that I didn't know about the food bank. I think most people know that the Calgary Food Bank distributes emergency food hampers to people in need, to households in need in our community. What a lot of people probably don't know is that last year alone, the Calgary Food Bank distributed 3 million pounds of food to 81 charity partners. So there's a lot of charities in our city that are serving the community in other ways: homelessness, domestic violence, substance abuse, mental health. And if there's food involved in their services, chances are really good they're getting food from us. I think one of the other things that folks don't really know about the Calgary Food Bank is that we are not a government-funded agency. We have a $70 million a year budget, and we have the tagline, by community, for community, because truly, the Calgary Food Bank is entirely supported by the city of Calgary, the people of Calgary. Not the city as in the municipality. The city is in the people. Mm-hmm. And I think that is very few people realize that.
How many people are involved in the organization?
It's bonkers. We have about 100 staff, which you would expect. We have multiple warehouses and distribution centers and all of those things. But what truly blows my mind is that on any given day, we can have as many as 300 volunteers on site at the Calgary Food Bank. We run 4 shifts of volunteers a day, and the city steps up. Like, this is that by community for community. It's not just on the funding side. Like, when 3/4 of your workforce is volunteer labor, that is an insane show of support from the community.
Yeah, I had no idea. I volunteered before. My grandma does fairly often.
Yeah.
And I have, but I've seen, 20 people at a time, something like that.
Yeah, it's wild.
You kind of touched on it, but what did you underestimate about the organization before you joined?
What did I underestimate? So many things. Like, this is definitely you don't know till you know kind of a job. And that's of no fault of the board and the hiring committee that brought me in, but it's just until you're in it, you don't realize the complexity of it. Like, we have 2 warehouses, an office building, and now we've opened a second community distribution center downtown. So there's just the complexity of the logistics. I've been 20 years in the nonprofit sector, but I now have a fleet of trucks and a fleet of forklifts, and we're dealing with pallet weight and floor capacity and all those kind of things that are all new to me. Obviously, we all know that food is a basic human need. It is literally a necessity of life. And so understanding the importance of the work, I understood what I was getting into in that regard, but I don't think I fully appreciated that I was walking into a critical essential service at the height of the cost of living crisis. So my first day on the job was March 19th, 2023, a board strategy session on a Sunday where the board and I learned at the same time that we had a 21-day wait list. If you called today and you couldn't feed your babies, you couldn't feed your family, we were like, see you in 3 weeks. So, I mean, the great news is there's nothing like a clear mandate as a new leader. And so it was like, hey, new CEO, figure it out. And we went from serving 400 households a day to 700 households a day in 4.5 months.
Wow.
I had it, what I called at the time, like the speeding car theory, where I thought, okay, we've got this backlog. We're going down the QE2. We're going 110. The car in front of us is going 110. We need to speed up and go 130 to get past them. And then we can go down and maybe recalibrate at 115. We've got a backlog. We're feeding 400 a day. We'll increase up to 600. We'll clear the backlog and we'll come back down to maybe 450, 500. We ended up having to go all the way up to 750 to clear the backlog, which I wasn't expecting. And then we recalibrated back down to 700. And then we went back up to 750 and then back down to 700 and then back up. And we're now doing 800 households a day out of our main warehouse. And we've opened a new downtown location where we're doing another 120 a day. So there was no bring it back down to 110. That bringing it back down never happened. And so it feels like in a lot of ways, it's been like 3 straight years of just pedal to the metal.
What's the demand like now, and what's that backlog looking like?
You know, unfortunately, like I said, in 2023, I really joined the food bank at what was sort of the height of the cost of living crisis. But what we've now seen in the 3 years since is as inflation has slowed, I mean, the first thing is with inflation, even when inflation slows, that doesn't mean prices are going back down. It just means they're going up slower. And even as we've seen inflation start to ease, the one area of our economy that still has above average rates of inflation right now is food. And so we have not seen an easing of the need in our community. And in addition to that, obviously, Alberta and Calgary specifically has one of the fastest growing populations in our country right now. And so the addition of population, housing crisis, and then cost of food crisis, we continue to see unprecedented demand, and we really struggle to keep pace. So we still have folks on waiting lists, and we're still having to sometimes make hard choices about how we allocate our food and our time and our efforts.
We were going to do this in December because Christmas time and, but I was wondering if January was actually harder because less people feel like donating in January.
Yeah, there's definitely a flow of philanthropy in Western societies, particularly where, as we go from sort of American Thanksgiving through to Christian Christmas, we see a lot of philanthropy. And, there was probably a time in our history where that almost was able to tide us through. Like, that's okay. We'll get all the money in December and we'll spread it out. But there was also a time in our history where our demand was very seasonal. And it was really, we had heightened demand in December. There's fewer community gardens, fewer pancake breakfasts, all those things. But where we're at today, our demand is, sort of to borrow a sports euphemism, like we're operating at 110% all the time. And so we're really trying to make sure our community knows that hunger isn't seasonal. So we need their support not to be seasonal too.
Mm-hmm. What parts of the system are under the most pressure right now?
Oh, like when you sort of like, what are our bottlenecks as an organization?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I would say for us as an organization, and one of the reasons we just opened a new facility in downtown Calgary is it's a constraint of space and facility. And obviously, we're always keeping an eye on that income statement and is the cash donation coming in that we need? And are we getting the food donation that we need? I'm an eternal optimist. And what I think is just absolutely fascinating about the city of Calgary is how Calgary steps up. And so I'm not, as much as I'm like, I know at some point there's a breaking point, we're not there. I truly believe in the generosity of our city and that people will continue to give. However, the limitations of our own systems operating out of one facility that's where we're starting to break. And that's where we actually opened our first ever branch location in downtown Calgary in December of 2025 because we are at maximum capacity in our main distribution center. We cannot serve more than 800 households a day. So we've added about we think we're gradually phasing up, and we think we'll get to close to 200 a day out of that main location in downtown Calgary. And we're actually now sourcing facilities for a second branch location in the city so that we can continue to be more accessible. So it's in large part about numbers, but it's also about in your neighborhood, if you didn't have a vehicle and you had to get to the Calgary Food Bank, how long would that bus ride be? And how many transfers would you have to take? And if you had a 2-year-old in tow, what would is that really making food accessible to you if you had to go from here to there on a 3-hour bus ride? And so we want to bring the food bank to the communities where the people are so that we are truly accessible to them.
Is there something about the demand that people get wrong?
I would say I think food banks have existed in our country since about 1980. And certainly at that time, there was a pretty significant economic crisis. Mortgage rates were 18%, all of those things. And food banks were largely born out of a need for support for folks who were facing sudden unemployment. And for the most part, I would say a lot of the support we've given over our 4-decade history has been that crisis situation, emergency support. What we've seen really shift in the last 5 years, and I think this really comes back to that inflationary piece, is an increase in working poor and an increase in senior citizens on fixed income. And we're talking senior citizens who saved for retirement, but they did not plan on this level of inflation. And so 65% of Calgary Food Bank clients have jobs. I think it's something in the ballpark of 29% of them have full-time jobs, but their income level is so low. It's somewhere between $15 and $20 an hour that they simply can't afford to live in our city. And so when you start to see that shift in the demographic, when that many people, for all intents and purposes, are doing things right, they've got a job, they're trying to pay their rent or their mortgage, they're making their car payments, all those other things. And at the end of the day, that bottom line of the budget, the only line that has maybe some variability is food. And there's just not enough left. What's the long game on that? Because, when someone's unemployed, you're like, okay, we'll help you reskill. We'll help you get a job. If maybe there's English language deficiencies, we'll get you some training. We'll help you out. You've got substance abuse. We'll help you fix that problem. But when it's like, okay, you are employable, you are employed, you have a job, you're doing all these things and you still can't make ends meet. Are we feeding those people forever? What's the end game on that? And that's something that we're really trying to figure out right now.
Mm-hmm. How is this role different than your past leadership roles?
So the last organization that I was in and had the privilege of leading for 7 years was a nonprofit organization called Junior Achievement. And I was there for 13 years, 6 as head of fund development and operations and 7 as CEO, and worked with kids and taught them entrepreneurship and financial literacy. And really, it was a lot about self-sufficiency and employability. And what's great is I actually think I am able to take a lot of my learnings from that role and employ them in my current role at the food bank, just in that nonprofits are business and good business is good nonprofit and vice versa. Nonprofits make up 8% of the national GDP, and we're a $70 million a year organization. And so there's a lot of important practical business elements that need to be run really well. And so I'm really bringing a business lens to the work that we do. But in terms of sort of that higher level leadership side, I mean, there's sort of things that are the same because I just believe the fundamental tenets of like good leadership are sort of universal. But going from running an organization with 25 staff that were spread out across the province and working in youth programming to running an organization that has 100 staff and 300 volunteers a day and has the complexities of logistics and enterprise and food in and food out and forklifts and trucks, I'm definitely having to learn to be a different type of leader because I can't be as in the weeds as I maybe could in a smaller organization. And that's really hard for me because I really like to be in the weeds.
And it's probably a big contrast from junior achievement being kind of a long-term goal compared to a short-term almost crisis.
Yeah, it is. You're right. Like there's that kind of preemptive almost like, hey, we're going to teach kids this so they don't need the food bank.
Yeah.
And this is really that responsive, critical need. Like we have people coming to us who are like, I haven't eaten in 3 days. And like that is a different level of emergency response for sure.
Yeah. You kind of touched on it. I was going to ask what you brought from your past roles and I was also going to ask what you left behind, what doesn't apply to this job.
Yeah, I think for me, what I've had to, and I don't know if I've done a really good job of leaving behind. I think I'm kind of in that like New Year's resolution phase where I'm like, okay, I'm still figuring this out. But I have really realized like I can't do everything. And it's that weird balance of like when you've been somewhere for 13 years, there's an element of where all the bodies are buried. And when you come in as an external CEO, it's a pretty steep learning curve. And the more complex the organization, the steeper the curve. So there's been that side of it. And I think what I've sort of realized now almost 3 years in is, okay, this isn't just about the learning curve. This is about, I can't know that forklift 7 needs a new battery. That's why I have a logistics director. And there's an element of letting go.
Was there a problem in this role that looked familiar but turned out to be totally different?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I think for me, I alluded to this in your first question, just about who am I, and that like I'm a collaborator and a community builder. And I think in a lot of ways, the problems are universal. And whether you're talking politically or talking about how we work together in the sector, I don't think anyone disagrees that food insecurity is a problem right now. I think we just sometimes have different perspectives on the solutions. Mm-hmm. And I'm a really big believer that we can find something in common with everybody and find a way to work together. And I did that a lot in my last job. And I think at the food bank and the role that the Calgary Food Bank plays in our community, it's that much more important because we are so critical to so many people's lives in our city right now. I don't think I realized that we didn't necessarily have that ethos and that reputation in the past. And so it's been a lot of work for the last 3 years to really build those relationships in our sector and in our community to say, hey, there's no ego in this. If there's a better way to do this work, or if there's a better group to serve a certain population, I'm okay with that. And if we can support you in that, if we can help with our procurement to support keeping your costs down or give you warehouse space, I'm here for that. But I don't think I fully realized that I was coming into, again, an organization that had pre-existed and been pre-existed for a long time. So there was relationships in history that, for better or worse, when you come into this role, even if it's not your baggage, it's the organization's baggage and you have to carry it. Mm-hmm. And I've had to kind of learn how to carry that baggage and figure that out, regardless of what my role was in the past.
How do you decide what gets your attention first when kind of everything is urgent?
I have an employee here with me and she's laughing right now because she's like, yeah, that's why she was 10 minutes late. It's tough. It's really tough.
Yeah.
And I don't really have a great answer for that because I am probably still too in the weeds. But one of the things I'm really working on right now is recognizing the first thing I need to do is when there's competing priorities, what are the things that only Melissa Fromm can do? I can't, if the premier wants to come in and have a conversation about a disability benefit or something really big like that, I can't farm that out to someone else. That's got to be a Melissa Fromm conversation. But if the battery needs replaced on forklift 7, there's 3 other people in the organization that can deal with that. And I'm having to realize I need to do a better job of prioritizing what are the things that only Melissa can do. Those need to be my priorities and lean on the incredibly talented people who I brought into the organization because they're brilliant and let them do the other things.
Yeah. I think it's good to be a little bit in the weeds though.
That's the tough part because I think so too. I think there's that balance of I shouldn't be the person always bagging potatoes, but I think there's really huge value in my team seeing, she's willing to get her hands dirty. I think there's something about that builds camaraderie and rapport and trust and all of those things. And it's just such a tough balance of how much do you have to do or should you do to reach that threshold? And then how much is too much? And I don't know the answer. I have all the questions, none of the answers right now.
It's have you ever seen Undercover Boss?
Yeah.
It's they go to their restaurant or whatever store and they're always so surprised at what's happening at different levels. So it's better, I guess, to keep your finger on the
I would
pulse.
hate that if someone did an Undercover Boss with me and I went to one of our locations and was surprised. I would feel like that was almost like a personal failure. Like, how did I not know this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there something that people underestimate about leading a constant crisis environment?
Yeah, it's kind of one of those, like, unless you're in it, you just really can't appreciate the level of, I think, chaos that comes from an environment like the Calgary Food Bank or the Alex or the Drop-In Center, where it's this combination of we don't have the same clear economic arguments of money in, money out and ROI, because it's all social ROI. So that already changes the entire equation of your economic stability. And then you have the element of urgent need. Like, this is literally people need food to live. And then you have the element of people in very high stress situations, because if you can't feed your family, nothing erodes your mental health and your capacity, like not being able to eat and not being able to feed your kids. And so we deal with people who are in a lot of ways at their worst. And then we also do deal with, people who have other underlying issues that have led to their food situation. And so there's a lot of volatility in those lineups and in that parking lot every day. And I mean, sometimes I'm there on site for incidents, and sometimes I hear later from staff and they're all amazing and they handle them so beautifully and with such humanity. But sometimes I go home just shaking my head like, this should be a reality show. Like, this is, The Office has nothing on the food bank. I've got a title. I think we could call it Holy Hamper. And I'm gonna, there's all sorts of stuff that happens. Like, I think I've probably got at least 3 seasons worth. Because like I said earlier, just no 2 days are the same.
Yeah. I'm going to take a quick break.
Okay.
We'll be back. Hey, everyone. If you're new to the show, please subscribe on YouTube. Lots of listeners on Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio. Keep subscribing there. Share it with someone. If you think it's a cool concept, share it with your friends. We want to keep it going. So, yeah, thanks so much. Stay tuned for more Deets. And we're back. Do you like how I talk to the cameras?
I love it.
What do you notice about the city now that you didn't before being this close to the work?
I mean, I've been in the sector for, like I said, like 20 years. And so I think I've been really privileged that I have had a front row seat to the generosity of Calgary. And I have lived in other cities, I have lived in other countries, and I know definitively that the blood that runs through the veins of the people in our city is unequivocally different. And there is a generosity in Calgary. And I think I'll always just remember the floods and like people, like I remember like there being just like free hot dog stands in like neighborhoods that have been flood affected, and like strangers cleaning out each other's basements, and just that underlying culture of our city exists every day. And I've had that front row seat. But I really feel like now I'm like backstage. And it's like when people are hungry, when people need food, absolutely our city steps up. And it is unbelievable to see the levels of generosity of time, talent, and treasure that come from our city. And that absolutely does not exist everywhere in our country. And it's just such an incredible privilege to be able to see that firsthand.
What part of the work is hardest to describe from the outside?
I think it's what we talked about earlier, like that chaos. And I think, especially being at the more senior executive level, I think no matter what, whether you're the CEO of ATB or the CEO of TC Energy, you've got a lot of work and you're answering a lot of questions and you've got your finger in a lot of pies and all of that. But I think when you come into an environment like the Calgary Food Bank or some of the other really urgent response charities in our city, and you're dealing with life and death situations, emergency need, volatile populations, people, at their worst, they're at their breaking point. And I don't think, unless you are in it every day, I don't think you can understand the level of chaos. And it's well orchestrated chaos, but it is absolutely chaos in many ways.
Is there something that surprised you about how people show up when given the chance?
Yeah, I mean, I come back to my earlier answer about just how Calgary steps up. And I think what has absolutely blown my mind, and when I say it to other people, it blows their mind, is that volunteer piece. Like, for sure, we could not do the work we do without the financial resources and the food donations we get. But also, we absolutely could not do the work we do without those volunteers. To have almost 300 people a day drop everything and come to the Calgary Food Bank for a 4-hour shift. And some of those people come in once a month. Some of them are corporate groups who come once a year. Some of them are tried and true faithful volunteers who come 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 to 4. It's practically their job. And I just cannot believe the commitment that those people make to the cause. And I tell you, they run that place.
What conversations do you wish happened more publicly around this?
You know, it's an interesting topic because I think we talk a lot about food insecurity. It's been, I would say, one of the top media stories probably in the last 3 years is around food insecurity, food inflation, the increase in working poor. I think those things are being talked about. I think that's out there. I think one of the things I wish we could see shift on this topic, but honestly across society in general, it's not just about the politicians. And honestly, I don't generally think the politicians are often the solution to most of our problems. But I really wish that there could be more understanding that we all agree on the definition of the problem. We all agree. We do not want a city where people go hungry. We don't want a city where there's a kid in a classroom somewhere in Calgary who doesn't have a lunch today. We all agree that we don't want that. We may have differences of opinion on what the solutions are, but the fact that we can all agree on the problem should mean that we can sit in a room together and have a conversation. And somewhere along the way, as a society, it feels more and more like we're more concerned with being right than getting it done. And I just wish we could get to a place where we could get back to that across the aisle conversation where we can agree to disagree and still work together.
Is there, where do you see people getting stuck when they try to help? Is there something that stops people that could be easier? It could be in donations or volunteering or...
I think one of the challenges is, and especially as we kind of go into maybe the younger generations and getting them more involved, is that people think it has to be big. Like, I only have $50 to give and we're doing CBC Blitz Day and maybe we've got these big companies that are showing up with $200,000 checks. And that young person who's just getting started thinks their $50 or $20 is just so insignificant. But it's not. Those 50s and 20s add up to big things. And I would say the same thing on volunteering, that there's some folks who think, well, I got a bit of time to give, but I can't come every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I can only come maybe once a quarter. But it's those little pieces that make the big whole. And I think I would just really want to encourage people. It's not about the big checks and being there 3 days a week. It's just to do something. And whether it's at the food bank, or whether it's with another charity, 2026 is actually United Nations Year of the Volunteer. And I think this is it. This is our chance to start saying, hey, it doesn't have to be a 40-hour week commitment or a 10-hour week commitment or a $10,000 a year donation. It can be $20 in 3 hours. But if you're doing something, it's making the world better.
Is there something that you hear people oversimplify about hunger?
Oh, so much. The number one thing I hear that's maybe a little bit derogatory towards the food bank is, have you seen the cars in that parking lot? You know what? There's a lot of different reasons that you might see a Tesla in the Calgary Food Bank parking lot. It might be a volunteer driving somebody to the food bank. It might be a neighbor. It might be a friend. It may be another charity that is helping to support somebody with whatever their other issues are. It also might be somebody who had a really good job and they thought that they were in a solid financial position. And we know from data that comes out every year from StatsCan, from Deloitte, from so many other financial institutions that tell us most Canadians are overextended right now. And a lot of us are one paycheck away from needing the Calgary Food Bank. And if I lost my job today and I couldn't feed my family, is the best thing for my family for me to sell my car, or is the best thing for my family for me to keep my car for a couple of months and try and get another job and have a car that can get me to the job interview and have a car that can get me to the new job? And so I think there's a lot of assumptions that can be made. And I just encourage people to be curious instead of critical.
What has surprised you about how widespread or varied this issue actually is?
I think earlier I talked about the fact that one of our fastest growing demographics is working poor. And one of our other really large demographics right now is seniors on fixed income, where these folks have planned for retirement. They absolutely did not plan for these levels of inflation because frankly, no one did. And I think it's just really important for people to know they very well could have a neighbor or two in their neighborhood that is currently using the food bank because they can't afford their mortgage and their car payment and to heat their home in the winter and their insurance costs and then the grocery bill on top of that.
Yeah. And I imagine there's probably a lot of people who feel embarrassed, who need it and don't want to go.
Absolutely. Every year, the Calgary Foundation releases something called Vital Signs. And it's it's kind of like the Stats Canada version of data on our city, but all related to social needs and the social fabric of our city. And one of the data points from that is just how many folks are skipping meals so their kids can eat. And it's heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
No one should be at that point in our city, because the beautiful thing is we do have these social safety nets of the food bank and other family support systems and the Salvation Army and the Alex and all these other charities that are here to provide that help. But there's so many folks that are like, oh no, there's other people worse off than me. That's for other people. And it's for anybody who is making, if you are having to make sacrifices where you are not eating because your kids need to eat, or you're living on itchy band noodles because you can't afford the produce and the protein, or you're only eating twice a day, not 3 times a day because you can't afford it, it's for you.
Mm-hmm. And it's probably, in theory, you're helping your kids, but it's like on the airplane putting your mask on first.
Totally.
Yeah. As someone on the inside, what feels most important to you to hold on to when thinking about all this?
I took over as CEO, like I said, almost 3 years ago, and I replaced a 23-year CEO. And it's a big organization, and there's a lot of complexity. And he was a wonderful human being who truly, he made sure they grew in a way that could feed the people and get the work done. But what often happens in the nonprofit sector is we're very mission focused. And so it's a bit of the oxygen mask thing where we're so focused on getting food out the door that we don't upgrade our systems, and we're not really taking care of our facility. And we don't have, I started in an organization that didn't have a work from home policy. We had a telecommuting policy. We had handwritten tax receipts. And so I've spent a lot of time being really, really focused on updating policies, improving systems, getting IT where it needs to be, all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, I have to step back, and my staff hear me say this a lot. At the end of the day, food in, food out. That's our focus. And if everything else goes down, and there's days when you have antiquated IT systems, things go down, we don't stop. Food comes in, food goes out.
What kind of support actually moves the needle, even if it's not the most visible?
What kind of support moves the needle, even if it's not visible? I think that the support that really moves the needle, that isn't talked about and isn't really visible, and a lot of people will never know about, is that what actually happens within our sector in the nonprofit world, and the collaborations and the partnerships that happen between charities that moves mountains for people. That we don't talk about it, we just do it, we just get it done. And, we talk a lot about needing the money, and we talk a lot about needing the volunteers. And then honestly, as a sector, we kind of just quietly have these conversations and say, okay, if you do this, I'll do this, and we'll get it done.
How can people get involved? I'll link everything, but what's the first way? And what are you looking for most? Are you looking more for donations, food, volunteers?
It's a time, talent, and treasure operation, I tell you. So the best way to get involved is to just go to calgaryfoodbank.com, and right across the top of that screen, there's those drop-down menus of how to volunteer, how to donate. Do you want to donate money? Do you want to donate food? Do you want to hold an event for us? I know it's January, and it seems crazy to already even be talking about this, but it's happening. People are already planning for Stampede. And one of the best ways that individuals and companies can support us is have your fun, have your party, but do something to give back while you're doing that. And so as people start to think about Stampede parties and spring flings and all those types of things, we always encourage them, like, use your platform as a company or as an individual to do something even bigger and get other people involved and share the message of what we're doing in our community.
Do people do that with their companies? Like,
Yeah.
oh, wow.
Yeah. I'm not going to say not everybody does it, but there's definitely a good number that will, if they're doing a Christmas party or Stampede party, they'll do a food drive. We actually have a new platform that allows us to do virtual food drives, which actually works better for us because it allows for us to make sure we're getting the types of food that our clients really need, as opposed to kind of random food. But also it allows for us to really lean on our purchasing power. So you go to the grocery store and buy a jar of peanut butter for $6, but we're buying direct from the vendor. Like, we're buying right from Skippy or whoever. And we can probably buy 2 or 3 jars of peanut butter for that $6. And so there's a lot of really fun ways that we're starting to curate that allow for people to be engaged and involved, that now you don't have the logistics of now you've got 10 boxes of food and how are you going to get it to the food bank? And we'll do it all online. It's easy.
Do you have any other messages you want to get across before we close out the episode?
I think just to close it off, I would just go back to that tagline for the Calgary Food Bank. We are now in our 44th year in the city, and we were started by our community, and we are for our community, and that continues to be truly who we are. And I just have such gratitude for the city that supports us, and I just implore them to continue to think about what is the Calgary that they want and to be a part of building that. And I think part of that is kind of a no man left behind. Like, let's just take care of each other.
Great. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
That is all I have for today.
It was such a good conversation and some questions that kind of had me like, oh, how am I going to answer this?
Thanks.
Good.
I do what I can. I just take these off and it ends immediately.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Okay.